welcome to episode 230 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Lydia Creech,
Ash Baker,
and Andrew Swafford.
And in today's episode, we will be talking about movies that we saw this week in part 1, and in part 2, we will be continuing our Jackie Chan series with 1985's Police Story. But let's go ahead and dig into movies that we saw this week. 2 movies that we're going to talk about are big award players, ended up on a lot of best of the year lists, etc., etc. But we here in the southern part of the United States don't really get those movies as quickly as you East and West Coast elitist. So I don't know where this went. Just went to a strange place. Anyway,
there's a lot of resentment just hit up in there.
Yeah, it just got out there. Anyway, let's talk about If Beale Street Could Talk first. It's the latest from Barry Jenkins. I caught this back at TIFF, but it has gone wide in the last few weeks. It is based on the novel by James Baldwin, and it tells the story of a woman who is pregnant. Her fiance is falsely imprisoned, and she and the rest of her family are working to clear his name and prove his innocence. It stars Kiki Lane and Stefan James. Yeah. Andrew, what did you make of Beale Street?
I liked Beale Street, though I don't know if I'm as high on it as a lot of folks are. Definitely not as high on it as you were, Zach. Though when I walked out of Moonlight, I was also in that same place.
I was gonna say, and it took you a while on Moonlight.
That is a movie that I've really come to love in the 2 years since it's come out, and it's one of my picks for like the best of the decade. So ask me 2 years from now about Beale Street, I'll probably give you a different answer. But just general thoughts on it. One thing that I admire about Barry Jenkins as a director is the way that he has shifted his style and his influences here, but it still very much feels like him. Moonlight was pulling from a lot of European and Asian slow cinema, as well as chopped and screwed hip-hop. Nathan has a really good video essay about that. And this one is more of like a classical melodrama. It feels a lot like Douglas Sirk at times. It feels a little bit like Jacques Demy. But it always feels like Barry Jenkins because he has this great sense of lyricism and how he captures people just looking at each other and talking to each other. A lot of folks have remarked upon just the romantic gaze that his characters have when they stare deeply into the camera, and he's often fluctuating the slow motion as well to kind of capture these moments and slow them down, kind of like Wong Kar-wai does. My favorite scene in the movie is like a heavy conversation scene with Brian Tyree Henry. He's only in one scene in the whole movie, and I think he completely steals the show. He's talking to Stephen James about his experiences in prison, and it's just this one long unbroken shot on him as he's kind of like shifting around and looking around and making eye contact with Fonny, the character's name, as Miles Davis's Kind of Blue plays in the background. And the lyricism that Barry Jenkins brings to the table, it carries over into the sound design too, because you're not just hearing a Miles Davis track play straight, you're also hearing it as it would sound in the room. So it's like diegetic sound with room noise added to it, but he's also fluctuating the way that it's being mixed. There's like reverb that's fading in and out, and it seems like at some points you're getting more of the high end, other points you're getting more of the low end, and it's like this saga of like emotion as Brian Tyree Henry is like explaining his experiences in prison, and the music is like always shifting around to match his level of emotion. I just thought it was so beautiful. Now I do have some criticisms of the movie, and I can't really tell if they are genuine flaws with the movie or if these are like stealth strengths of the movie. I'm trying to figure out where I stand on it. I definitely don't take any joy in criticizing anything by Barry Jenkins because I just think he's a really great new voice. The main thing for me here that keeps me from loving it is the structure of the movie, which I feel like increasingly is something that I harp on a lot on Cinematary. it is full of what my friend Cam called narrative cul-de-sacs. For much of like the first 75% of the film, we keep getting introduced to new characters and introduced to new plot points and different avenues the story could go, and it doesn't go anywhere with them past that initial scene. And that is true about my favorite scene in the movie. The Brian Tyree Henry scene is a narrative cul-de-sac. It doesn't advance the plot. It increases the emotional stakes of like Fonny's going to prison, and we know he's going to go to prison in the future, but it doesn't serve the plot, which I don't know if is necessarily a good or a bad thing. But there are some scenes that I felt were pretty unnecessary, or maybe like took the movie into territory that it didn't necessarily need to be in. There's this long sequence that takes place in Puerto Rico, 2 long conversations that happen in Puerto Rico, the first of which seems just like extraneous and we can throw that away. The other of which gets into some stuff about sexual abuse that I don't feel like the movie is intent enough in like fully exploring. Like I think that there's some unfortunate timing of this coming out a couple months after the Kavanaugh hearing, because the line like, "I believe she was raped but not by him," gets said, and I know Barry Jenkins doesn't want like the implications of that in the time that we are currently living in, but that I couldn't help but think of that when that line was said. So the way that the narrative ends up going, it's very sprawling, it's very plotty. It has this novelistic structure, of course, because it's adapted from a Baldwin novel, but it has that poetic nonverbal style on the one hand, and then just like being a little overly complicated or like full of all these loose ends on a narrative end. And if you compare that to Moonlight, like Moonlight is such a poetic, beautiful looking movie, but it also has this like beautifully symmetrical structure with the 3 sections and the 3 different actors playing the character. There's something strange going on with the editing of this thing too, because it's, Moonlight is all about a progression. You're seeing somebody grow up, and you're seeing these ellipses throughout their lives. And this one, we have like the past and the present sort of folded in upon each other. We have a basic narrative that's moving forward. On the one hand, we know at the beginning of the movie that Fonny's been put in jail, but then it is full of all these flashbacks, and the flashbacks are placed in strange locations next to the present day narrative. The flashbacks are given to us often out of order, and so this is where I'm thinking to myself that maybe there's an intent behind this, and this is part of the point of what the movie is doing, because as you're jumping from scene to scene, you don't necessarily know when in the plot you are, and so it almost makes that very complicated like series of events, or this not complicated, I shouldn't say complicated, I should say it's like packed full of different events and different conversations that end up going nowhere in many cases. But because you don't know when you are in that narrative, you're left with this sense of presentness. Like you're the only thing you can do is to like be there with the characters in that moment, and not think about where they've been or where they're going. And that seems to be what Barry Jenkins does in the way that he captures these conversations in this like very beautiful, very atmospheric way. Like we're just gazing in each other's eyes and like existing in this moment in a like a very deep way. So I think that could turn around and end up being a positive about the movie, but I don't know. I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah, can I interject just to kind of add to that point? Yeah, because I feel like a lot of what you're describing, especially when it comes to what did you describe them as? Narrative
cul-de-sacs.
Cul-de-sacs. Yeah.
All right. I think that's kind of what it's kind of the point of the movie. It's a movie that is purposefully filled with all of these kind of loose ends. It's a movie that never is really that intent And the book does the same thing. Neither of them really have answers for what happens to these characters. They're just left in this kind of present state because that's really all they have. They don't really have anything else to latch onto. And so you have all of these moments that kind of go somewhere and you never really find out what happens because it's something that is not probably ever resolved. You don't really have any resolution to what that narrative, that plot beat is, because these are two, this is an African American couple in New York in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, in that range. I forgot specifically when.
I think it's 50s. I'm going to say it's
the 50s.
Yeah.
I started with 50s, and that's what I thought. That are in the 1950s that you can feel the vibrations of the city kind of mounting up against them constantly, and the way that Barry Jenkins crafts the narrative is to constantly put you at in contact with that kind of aggression on the outside, and then kind of release it. And it's kind of this constant almost breathing apparatus that maybe is not totally that satisfying, but I think is trying to probe just the experience of being black rather than it's not Green Book, it's not handing you a lesson,
I also want to say when Moonlight came out, Barry Jenkins did like a tour of the Criterion Closet, and he talked about his love of and the mood for love, and I think this film especially parallels with it really nicely. It's about a couple that has to live in the moment because kind of the past and the future. And in the mood for love, it's for personal reasons, and in if Beale Street Could Talk, it's for like these systematic, racist, injustice reasons. But just this like living in the present moment, and that being the whole atmosphere, I see in the mood for love in this film a lot more than I did in Moonlight.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and there's some restaurant scenes in this that really evoked in the mood for love for me. So I think that's a apt comparison. And you guys are bringing me around to thinking these things are positives more than negatives. But I need to watch it again and see what my experience is like with it now that I kind of know what it's gonna be.
Yeah, and
that was a thing for Moonlight as well.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. And it was one I remember watching this at TIFF, and I saw it like very early in the morning. And it's a very hazy movie. I was listening to Barry Jenkins talk with Paul Thomas Anderson on the DGA podcast, and he was talking about how for the last like 2 months or less of editing, he would literally wake up in the morning really early, watch the whole movie, and find little bits and parts that he wanted to clean up and fix. And he said that kind of that the act of doing that was it kind of added this way of thinking that he really refined how he was looking at the movie. And I think that's kind of how you have to look at it. It is such a hazy movie. It feels so foggy at times. It does have this kind of narrative that is flowing all over the place that really doesn't necessarily guide you in a straight path. That can probably be frustrating. It also has the voiceover coming in at times, and
that was a strange choice, I thought, and especially paired with at the beginning of the movie, at the end of the movie, there are also still photographs, like historical photographs, that are just placed on screen as the voiceover is happening. There's a freeze frame that happens near the beginning during the voiceover, and I kind of felt like I was just being whipped in all directions. I don't know. What do you make of all that? I was
wondering if that was a function of being adapted from the novel.
I think so, because the novel is very much in her voice. Like, she's narrating the story, and it's deeply built into her dialogue and the way that she's describing stuff. So I feel like that is Jenkins, who has been on the record saying that he was pretty faithful with this adaptation, was probably trying to kind of imbue Baldwin's voice into the narrative. That's my only guess.
I wonder if it would have been strengthened by removing that narration, because I think he's so good at conveying characters' inner lives and emotions without narration, right? I wonder if it would be a less is more situation.
And I think you're trying to evoke kind of that hazy, foggy atmosphere. Voiceover works towards that. It's like putting it a little bit removed, like a little bit dreamy kind of state.
That is true. Yeah, it's like, how far in the future is she narrating this from? We're kind of unclear on that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But we would all recommend it for sure. People should go watch it.
It's really, yeah.
It's a very beautiful movie. If Beale Street Could Talk, it is in theaters now. Another one that I've seen pop up on a lot of the best of 2018 lists that just recently kind of hit theaters around here is Shoplifters, the Hirokazu Koreeda movie. He's been pretty prolific, at least recently, with films. He's been popping out a lot lately, but this one won the Palme d'Or at Cannes last year, and pretty much the story is you pick up this makeshift family of shoplifters. I guess they all kind of have their grift of choice, but it is this: you have this husband and wife character, then you have a grandmother character, a kind of probably mid-20s character, and then these two children, the young girl of which you meet very early in the film when the husband and the young boy see her outside in the freezing cold, and they kind of take her in and let her join this ragtag group of people, and then you follow the life as they this very poor family is kind of making do to survive, and really tries to form this bond as a real family, even though none of them really are all too connected in terms of familial blood, and that begins to unravel as the plot goes on. And I don't want to just jump too deep into kind of the third act of the movie, because that kind of gets heavy into spoiler territory. But it was a movie that I did see high on a lot of people's lists. I'm not incredibly familiar with Koreeda's stuff. I know that, like I said, that he has been relatively prolific lately. But this one, I was kind of hit or miss with. There was a lot of moments that were genuinely moving. I don't know. I have the list of names here, but it's Letterboxd and doesn't have it attached to people. But the woman who plays the wife character in this just gives this wonderful performance. As you can see her kind of surrogating her affection and love, and wanting to be a mother onto this young girl who they pick up and try to save from her, because it's alluded to that her family life is she's being hit and beaten and disregarded by her mother, and so you can see her trying to kind of be this parental figure for her. But I also feel like this movie kind of has stretches of it that don't necessarily culminate together. There are these like wonderful human moments that kind of are pieced together and build up the core of this film. But I don't know. I think I understand, the point that's being kind of gleaned from the third act and how the plot kind of transpires, but I don't necessarily, it kind of started to lose me a little bit midway through that. And I regained it a little bit, but it was a movie that I feel like I liked a little bit less than a lot of other people. But Andrew, I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
I'm in a similar place. I think I'm a little bit more positive on it than you seem to be, Zach. But I also come to it from a place of mostly ignorance about Koreeda. I've only seen his movie Our Little Sister. Have you seen any of his other movies before this?
No, that's what I'm saying. Okay. He's a blind spot of mine.
Okay, so I've seen Our Little Sister. I know he has a bunch of stuff that is all kind of in the same vein of these like quiet family dramas. And when I watched that movie, I felt I liked it. I thought it was charming. I enjoyed watching it, but it felt very slight to me. And I'm reminded watching Shoplifters of this thing that Nathan said on the podcast a while back. He was talking about the difference between I think it was white elephant art versus termite art. Like termite art being something that is very small scale and unassuming, but ends up being more important over time than the stuff that like presents itself as being really important. And with our little sister, it did just feel slight in kind of a negative way. With this, I do feel like it has a sense of resonance that movie didn't have. It might just be because there's more of a political dimension to this. It's dealing directly with class. It has a much more complicated family dynamic. But I don't know. I felt much more emotionally moved watching Shoplifters. It has this sense of purity to it for much of the runtime. The family here is extremely unorthodox. It's kind of grotesque at times, to be honest. But it is this portrait, in a way, of kind of like a perfect family. These characters, when they're off on their own, they often have to do very dangerous things or saddening things. Like shoplifting is the obvious thing, but there's also one of the daughters does something called hostessing, which is I don't know if I can explain it very well. Lydia, are you familiar with what hostessing is?
I'm familiar with it. It's kind of like paid companionship. People go see hostesses and hosts for the experience of being catered to in this like very false environment. It's not necessary. It's not sex work. It's
in this. It is more like sex work. There's a companionship element.
Like this level of emotional engagement that you're paying for is the idea,
right?
And in this one, it's like there's like a screen in between the hostess and the person who's there, and they're they're engaging with the other person, but there is this kind of like barrier between. There's some kind of tame stripping that happens too, right? And it seems like the daughter doesn't have a problem with this necessarily, but there's a huge difference between seeing these characters on their own and doing the things they have to do to get by, and when they're together, when they're just so loving and so supportive and so happy, like genuinely happy. It is the least toxic family dynamic you can possibly imagine. And you get this in these very overly emotional scene when the mother character is explaining to like the newest addition to the family, like what actual familial love is like, as opposed to abusive familial dynamics. And then there's also this sense of purity in these light humorous scenes as well. There's a scene where the dad is talking to his son about his son going through puberty and like starting to feel compelled to look at women's boobs in public and stuff like that. And it's a laugh scene, but it's also like this like aspirational, like this is what a father and a son could get along like if there wasn't all this other baggage that people are usually working through with their family. Yeah, the dynamic between the young boy and the kind of the man, the husband, where he's desperately wanting to be this kid's father, and that's kind of where the movie ends on, is this dynamic between those two characters. And I feel like that's between that and the wife character and the young girl, like those kind of parallels, and like you said, just the emotional baggage of them actually being related and having that in between the relationship, just alleviating that, it like shows the almost the most like pure way to parent another, to parent a young person, because you don't have that emotional baggage of this is somebody, this is your offspring. It's just you chose this person and are, deciding to devote your love and affection to them.
So the character work here, the emotional resonance of this movie all feels really strong to me. I think that my criticisms fall along the same lines that yours do, Zach, where it starts to just kind of feel a little muddled after you get past the halfway point in terms of how it's structured. I don't think that this movie uses time very well. Cora Ada is sometimes talked about, like in Paul Schrader's book, his new intro to his book, he talks about Koreeda as being tangential or part of like the modern slow cinema movement. He's borderline slow cinema. He's definitely inspired by Ozu, but I think the difference is that slow cinema, I mean, people, the misconception is like it's movies but boring, and really like slow cinema is movies that use time in an incredibly intentional way. Like they are planning out the time, and you know, you have the flip side of that, like very high, fast-paced movies like Fury Road and things like that. But slow cinema is like asking you to experience time with the characters. And I don't know, and this does get a little slow and a little boring and a little too mundane at times, but I don't think it's because time is being restrained in an intentional way. It just felt like the scenes they just kept going on and on and on and on and on, and they weren't really cohering after a certain point in the movie. Like it's really focused for the first half, and then it sprawls out in a lot of different directions. The back half reminds me lot of Leave No Trace, as the characters who have kind of created their own insular functional family dynamic now have to deal with the expectations of the outside world. But I thought that the way that movie used like pace and atmosphere and time to convey that was way stronger than what Shoplifters ends up doing.
Yeah, agreed. Well, Shoplifters is in theaters now. Lydia, I'll be curious to get your thoughts, as I know it's coming near you pretty soon.
Next week.
Yeah, but I'm going to toss it over to Ash. You're going to kind of give us a little bit of a preview. You're going to be writing about this film for the site, but curious to hear a little bit about They.
Yeah, so I watched this movie, They. It is directed by and written by Anahita Gazvinazada. And it premiered at Cannes in 2017 as a special selection, and it stars Reese Fehrenbacher as the protagonist, Jay. And basically, I was really excited to see this movie because it is the first movie I think I've even heard of, and definitely that I've seen that has a character even in it who uses singular they them pronouns. So I was excited to see the movie, and I watched it, and I took it in. No, there are some good parts about this movie, but ultimately, I think that it presents a really, really interesting premise in the very start, and it quickly veers away from it. We start the film at a doctor's appointment with the protagonist, Jay, who has been taking hormone blockers to postpone puberty. Jay's 14 years old, and basically they've been taking these hormone blockers because they're questioning their gender identity, and they don't want to go through with a puberty that they may not want. And so the doctors and their parents are just giving them some time to think before they decide, what they want to do. So in this doctor's appointment that we begin the film in, the doctor tells Jay, "You're losing bone density because you've been on these hormone blockers for 2 years. So you need to go through with puberty. You just need to decide which hormones you want to start. So, so you need to decide basically whether you want to develop male or female characteristics." Basically is how we begin the film. And that in and of itself is, to me, like a wildly interesting premise to kind of force a child and someone who may identify as non-binary, to force them to kind of choose one or the other, is super interesting and like kind of devastating. But the film doesn't stay there. It quickly moves away from that and focuses on lots of other things, like Jay's sister and her boyfriend come to stay with Jay, and we get caught up in lots of family drama, how Jay's sister doesn't get along with their parents, and they just don't want her to be an artist, and she's doing too many residencies, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, all right. And then we go to the sister's name is Lauren, and we go to Lauren's boyfriend's house, or family's house, for like a family dinner for like an hour of the movie, basically. In an hour and a half movie we spend with the sister's boyfriend, who's Iranian, and basically it becomes about him and how it's like a reuniting of his family that's home from Iran, and it's like, okay, you know, Jay's there and feeling very uncomfortable, and so it's like the plot is very misdirected, and Jay as a character is kind of, in addition to the plot being kind of like misguided, I guess, is Jay as a character is really bleak, I want to say. Like, you know, this is a whole thing. Like, whenever I ask my friends, you know, hey, have you seen this movie or whatever, and it's an LGBT movie, they're like, does someone die? Or, you know, like, that's the thing. It's like, is it sad? Like, I'll watch it if no one kills themselves, basically, is what it comes down to. Like, queer people are so starved of representation.
Positive representation.
Yeah, and you know, Reese Fehrenbacher, I'm really glad was casted in this role, because I read that, you know, he was in the process of transitioning while they were making the film, so like A+ for casting. And I'm even tempted to say that like his performance is like really good. I just think that the character is like miswritten, I guess.
Is anybody behind the camera, whether the director or the writer, does anybody like identify that way? You know, is kind of in tune with the story in any way?
I really tried hard to find this out. I searched high and low. The director and writer doesn't have a Wikipedia page. I read an interview on the Cannes Film Festival website, and basically what she says about her inspiration for making the film is basically that she was just interested in ideas of identity, and the idea of like coming home is like very resonant to her as an immigrant, which makes sense because that's what an hour of the movie is about. And like, you know, if that's the movie that she wanted to make, like, I would be very happy to watch a movie about that. But just for this movie to be like presented as an LGBT movie, to be presented as a movie about non-binary existence, to be presented, you know, to be about
like that was the hook.
Yeah, that's what the description on every site, on IMDb, on Wikipedia, on Amazon Prime, on everything you look at, it says it's about, you know, a young person who's, you know, struggling with their gender identity. And it's not about that, you know? And Jay's like just like crouching the whole movie. Jay's hiding. Jay's clutching something the whole movie. Jay's so scared and like sad, very dead-eyed. There are lots of like close-ups of Jay's face, and like they don't even it just seems like there's no life in their eyes. And it's like, well, you know, people might say, well, you know, it's the hormone blockers or whatever. It's like, well, you know, there's no hint at that in the film, and there's no I don't know.
Well, I'll be curious to hear.
That's disappointing.
Yeah, I'll be curious to hear more thoughts into the written review. But for people who are kind of interested to catch it before your review comes out, where did you say it was streaming on Amazon?
Yeah, it's on Amazon Prime.
Cool. All right, check that out, and then look for Ash's review on the site. Real quickly to wrap up, Lydia, you're gonna slap on some jean shorts and an American flag and talk about the Dixie Chicks.
Actually, not an American flag.
Better not.
This is a 2006. This is a 2006 documentary by Barbara Kopel and Cecilia Peck. Barbara Kopel did Harlan County, USA, if you know that documentary, called Dixie Chicks: Shut Up and Sing. It's about the fallout in 2003. The Dixie Chicks were at the height of their popularity. They were like one of the most profitable female country groups, maybe just female groups ever. And they were on their world tour, Top of the World. And in London in 2003, right on the eve of America's invasion of Iraq, based on the lies of George W. Bush about weapons of mass destruction that Saddam Hussein had, lead singer Natalie Maines.
I learned about that in Vice, so yeah. I'm very aware of what you're talking about because I watched Vice. Continue.
Lead singer Natalie Maines just makes a little offhand comment like, "We're so ashamed to be from Texas, the same state as our president," and it was just kind of a joke at the time. The London audience loved it, but all of the country music stations in the United States and a lot of these far right, I would say fringe, but they're mainstream now, political groups lost their minds. And it wasn't an official boycott, but the Dixie Chicks got a ton of hate. The radio stations stopped playing all of their music. They actually received some death threats at some of the concerts that they did on the US leg of this tour. And it's this really incredible documentary that I think is a little bit of a crystallization of these, what people are willing to politicize. There's a lot of interviews of like former Dixie Chick fans. They're like, I really like them. They're so talented, but I just wish they'd keep the politics to themselves. Shut up and sing. And the documentary is kind of in two halves. It documents the backlash that they received for just this one comment, and then them trying to restage, write their second album in 2006. And not necessarily make a comeback in country. What I really admired about Natalie Maines is she's like, I'm not sorry. I did not deserve the treatment that I got. And I'm still mad. And I was right that what we did in Iraq was shameful. And I don't know, I got pretty teary-eyed throughout it. I really admired the way the Dixie Chicks, the other two band members, Emily Irwin and Marty McGuire, stood by her. They agreed with her. They never threw each other under the bus. And it's like, we just want to be able to make our music and also be allowed to have political opinions as individuals. It became this whole like free speech thing.
Probably not likely, but it would be nice if there was like a follow-up movie called Shut Up and Dribble.
Oh.
I think that's what Space Jam 2's about, actually.
Ew. And I'm not sure where to find it. I got it from the DVD from my library, but I really highly recommend it. It's entertaining and it's got a lot of good music in it, I guess. I might be a Dixie Chicks fan now. Or what is it?
Should be.
I'm going to get into the Dixie Chicks.
Well, if you're confused or unsure of any of the politics of this movie, again, Vice is in theaters now. It clears that all up for you. It's very straightforward, and it lets you know what you are stupid about. So check it out. It's there for your knowledge. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back. Go ahead, Lydia.
Natalie Main calls George W. Bush a dumb fuck, like straight to camera, and it's really affirming.
That sounds like a better scene than anything in Vice. So I'm already down with this movie. We're gonna take a short break. Police Story in part 2 after this. This is Zach Dennis talking to you during this ad break. Just imagine me in like a armchair, velvet robe with a snifter. I think that's what it's called, a snifter of bourbon or brandy, and I'm doing a little shaky thing. And I'm talking to you here about what we're doing at Cinematary, because I guess according to this description, it's a very sophisticated, very high-class organization, and it has its moments, you know. I think we may have a jackass episode every once in a while, but we also hit the finer arts, as they say. But there's a lot of stuff happening on Cinematary that we hope you can support. We've tried to take your money multiple times. We're, I guess, very bad at it. I feel no richer than I was at the beginning of this, so we'll go ahead and let that pass. You know, it's fine. We'll move on from that, and let's just focus on what we have on the website. There's a lot of great stuff, video essays, reviews, etc. List, all that good stuff is at cinematary.com. But also, if you're a fan, a rating and a review is always helpful. I know all the podcasts say that, but listen to the guy who's in an armchair with a velvet robe and a snifter of brandy as he asks you kindly to rate and review the podcast on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, all the good stuff. We're doing a lot of hard work is out there from these people who are working on Cinematary, and that's a nice reward for it. So if you're enjoying the show, please rate, subscribe, all that good stuff. But I've talked too long, and I know we have a very nuanced high-class discussion. So I'm gonna take a sip of my brandy, and yeah, on with the show. And we are back with part 2 of episode 230 of Cinematary. In this part, we'll be continuing our Jackie Chan series with 1985's Police Story. It's directed by Jackie Chan from a script by him and Edward Tang. The film stars Chan, Bridget Lin, Maggie Chung, Chor Yun, and Charlie Cho. The plot follows an honest Hong Kong cop who is protecting a triad boss's girlfriend turned informer who finds himself framed for the murder of a dirty cop and going on the run. The film contained many large-scale action sequences, including an opening sequence featuring a car chase through a shanty town, Jackie Chan stopping a double-decker bus with his service revolver, and a climactic fight scene in a shopping mall. The final scene earned the film the nickname Glass Story by the crew due to the huge number of panes of sugar glass that were broken during a stunt in this last scene in which Chan slides down a pole for several stories, and then the lights covering the pole had heated up heated it up considerably, resulting in him suffering second-degree burns, particularly to his hands, as well as a back injury and dislocation of his pelvis upon landing. And they make, a lot of effect to that because they replay it 3 times in the movie, which is kind of fun.
Oh, yeah.
Edward Tang, the screenwriter for this film and many others, said that he did not write this film the way normal Hollywood screenwriters work. Chan instructed Tang to structure the comedic film around a list of props and location, e.g. a shopping mall, a village, a bus, etc. In contrast to this production, most Hollywood films rely on the creativity of the screenwriters to create the plot elements of a film, which are then forwarded to the director for actual filming. In an interview with Chan, he discusses the stunt of sliding down the pole covered with lights. As with the clock tower stunt from Project A in 1983, Chan described his fear at the thought of performing the stunt. However, during the filming of Police Story, there was the added pressure of strict time constraints, as the shopping mall had to be cleaned up and ready for business the following morning. One of Chan's stuntmen gave him a hug and a Buddhist prayer paper, which he put in his trousers before finally performing the stunt. Stuntman Blackie Ko doubled for Chan during a motorcycle stunt in which his character drives through glass towards a hitman. In the double-decker bus scene, Jackie used a metal umbrella because a wooden one kept slipping when he tried to hang on to the bus. The film was cited by Jackie Chan as his personal favorite among his more than 100 feature films at the time. Before starting work on Police Story, Jackie Chan suffered through an ill-conceived Hollywood project, The Protector. Although shot in Hong Kong, director James Glickenhaus refused to work in the local style. Glickenhaus recalled, quote, "They never shoot masters. They shoot very short sections, and they do a lot of undercranking to speed up the movement, which I refuse to do. I told them I wanted to shoot the fights in masters, and then if they didn't work, go back and cover them." Chan preferred to shoot stunts in segments, allowing time to perfect each gesture. He went along with Glickenhaus's plan, but reshot sequences behind his back and inserted them into the version released in Asia. It was a box office failure, and Chan wouldn't have stateside success until the 1990s. While he was in Hollywood for his first busted project, though, The Big Brawl, Chan spent time watching a lot of silent films, saying, "Buster Keaton, Harold Lloyd, and what they did was amazing. Buster Keaton gave me a lot of ideas, new things I could do that were physical or funny but wasn't fighting." In 1987, the New York Times said, "The film's program notes describe Mr. Chan, who is both the director and star of Police Story, as, quote, a combination of Buster Keaton and Clint Eastwood, which says less about Mr. Chan than it does about the festival's gift for unhinged hyperbole. Mr. Chan has nothing in common with either Buster Keaton or Clint Eastwood. He is more like a scaled down, this is his word, not mine, Oriental Sylvester Stallone with energy and a willingness to smile fondly at himself. Police Story is of principal interest as a souvenir of another culture." Side note, Vincent Canby is a fucking asshole. 1980 in the 1987 Monthly Film Bulletin, they said Police Story starts well with its car chase described as an astonishing set piece, but that once the mix of realistic settings and fantasy action seems to have been established, the film falls back on Chan's clowning and turns into a slapstick comedy heavily dependent on cake in the face jokes. In 2018, for the 4K restoration, Matt Zoller Seitz wrote for RogerEbert.com, Police Story is one of the great 1980s action films. It's also one of the most 80s action films. It's a bundle of cop-on-the-edge cliches that climaxes with Chan's Hong Kong policeman hero at war with both his by-the-book superior officers and the crime lord villain who remains stubbornly beyond the law's reach. The synthesized score is music to Moose One's Hair By. Like many Chan films from this period of his career, it ends with a freeze frame followed with outtakes of Chan and his fellow performers goofing around on set and getting injured, scored to a pop song sung by Chan himself. But, as is the case with most memorable comedies, as well as most memorable thrillers, the excellence of Police Story has nothing to do with what kind of movie it is and everything to do with how it's executed. I think that is a perfect note to start our discussion of Police Story on and talk a little bit about this film, which kind of, for me, begins very much the same as Wheels on Meals that we talked about last week, where it is straight nonsense for at least an hour, and then the actual plot of the film kicks off, which I can see why that's probably a hindrance for a lot of Western audiences trying to kind of get into these, because it just whatever happens in the first 45 minutes it relates the plots, but it's nonsense.
I think that once we're 15 minutes in, the plot has settled in. As soon as he has to be the bodyguard of the crime boss lady.
The secretary.
The plot is kicked in.
The plot,
right?
no, the plot is that he's framed for the murder and goes on the run.
That doesn't happen until like halfway
Exactly.
through the movie.
It's just,
I guess I saw the plot. I guess there's two different conflicts here. One of which is he's framed for murder, and the other of which is he has to resolve things with Maggie Chung.
which we all
Does he
have
actually
to.
do that?
Not really. I mean, we'll get to that, I guess.
Okay, that's what I thought.
But I mean, I did not have any trouble following what was happening for the first hour. I mean, I would not call it pure nonsense at all.
I mean, I'm not saying that like
It's
as a
mostly
negative.
like an
It's
excuse
super
for
fun.
him to do stunts, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's just it's nonsense in the way of, yeah, he's just doing stunts and doing bits, and it correlates to what the actual plot is, but for the most part, like there's a correlation between the whole phone sequence and the plot, but for the most part, again, it's not about what the movie is about. It's about him executing this completely crazy bit, which is fantastic and great. But I feel like it just reminds me, it was the same thing with the last movie where there's a lot of just kind of fluffery of different stunts and different bits, and then they finally get into what the movie, like what the log line of the movie actually is. And I feel like that's probably why it sometimes this kind of struggles to connect with some audiences. But I don't know, maybe I'm on my own on this one. What did you guys think?
I agree.
Agree with what exactly?
I agree that it takes a long time to either A, get invested or figure out what's going on. And if you are not there for the stunt work, for the fight for choreography, for the kung fu, a lot of it might be a little bit boring. Is that sacrilegious?
I felt like the plot, like once the whole Jackie is framed for murder thing kicks in at the hour mark, like you're mentioning, Zach, I thought that actual plot was the least compelling part of this. I was way more interested when it was mostly gags and character work. But Ash, what were you about to say?
Yeah, I whenever he starts to, he has to like bodyguard the secretary. I felt like I could follow that pretty well, but whenever like he's over at her house or apartment or whatever, and he's like, you know, let me in, like, you know, being alone is dangerous, and she like won't let him in his in the apartment, and then he like
fake Michael Myers comes in through
yeah.
the closet.
He like gets somebody to come in and like fake like knife her. So like that was a little confusing to me. I mean, it was funny because it like she like knocks him out, you know, and he has to be like, you know, oh shit, like that's my friend, you know. But the plot like really kind of got interesting to me when at the court scene. Like before that, when they're in Jackie's apartment, I was like, you know, I was really enjoying the thing of like the cakes and the girlfriend stuff, like misunderstandings and things like that. But when you know, it was funny, but then when we get to the court scene and it's going really poorly, and then he's like, I have a tape. And, you know, you think it's going to be the tape that he recorded of her in the car, like giving evidence against this guy. But then, no, it's actually like she had stolen his tape recorder and like recorded him like being an absolute doofus in his own apartment.
And every line has a double entendre. It's such a written, like, humorous scene, you know? A lot of the
it would play over radio well.
It could,
almost.
absolutely. And so a lot of the quotes that you were reading, Zach, from reviewers saying like, well, it's all about the physicality, you don't have to worry about anything else. I think that's a good example of like, no, this actually is like planned and orchestrated very well, like on the page as well.
Yeah. I feel like that's where the plot actually got really interesting to me. Before, I was, like Lydia was saying, like really interested in like cars smashing through an entire fucking village, and Jackie Chan being pulled behind a bus, and
oh my god.
Yeah. You know, in Spider-Verse, when they're like that whole thing of like Spider-Man always gets back up. Jackie Chan always gets back up.
It's also worth mentioning that this is this he directed this one as well as worked on the script, which he was not as involved necessarily in the last movie, and so that's probably why a lot of the orchestration of the different gags and how everything is portrayed is much more precise. It feels like if you were watching something by, going back to the silent comics that we talked a lot about last week, but it's like watching like a Chaplin film or Buster Keaton film where you know that they've orchestrated and planned out and figured out the logistics for how this plot device in this gag is going to work and fit into their overall narrative structure. And this in Police Story, it feels the exact same way, and I feel like that's because you have Jackie behind the camera as well as doing everything else. I mean, does that make a difference for this one compared to Wheels on Meals?
I wonder if this one you get a better opportunity for Jackie Chan to show off what he's doing. This one's the first one we've seen for the series that actually has the outtake reel, because Wheels on Meals didn't have that, I don't think, at least not the one on Amazon. But it's like you see the effort that he's putting into it, and like he's really showcasing his own talents and like giving himself opportunities to do these set pieces, to do these stunts. Like specifically the narrative is built around them, so if the plot doesn't make any sense for a minute, it's because he's doing this set piece.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I guess, again, I have to like backtrack my poor description of the beginning of the movie from nonsense. But there is a lot of that where it is just these crazy ways that he is kind of getting from point A to point B. And even in the where he's playing the the bodyguard for the informer girlfriend, it's just it's constantly kind of this give and take, almost is this slapsticky, almost at times Laurel and Hardy-esque, where it's they're working off of each other. I think Bridget Lynn, who plays the Selena, the informer character, she's really good with Jackie Chan in this. I mean Maggie Chung has good moments, but is mainly just taking the brunt of his assholery. But like Bridget Lynn is like kind of working off him, and especially in the last sequence of the movie is taking some hard hits as well, on top of what Jackie's doing. She's also crashing through glass and having to fight off these attackers,
like breaking a table. Yeah. I also like the scene where they're in the apartment with Jackie Chan, and she and Maggie Chung, as Jackie Chan's girlfriend, like a little bit gang up on him. Because she's aware that the girlfriend's in the apartment and he's in the shower, and she's like, "But don't you love your girlfriend?"
He's like, "She's fine."
Yeah.
I'm curious, kind of going to the perception of this movie. It seems like this, out of the ones that we're talking about, especially the Hong Kong movies of his, is kind of the number one, the one that people most allude to, and I'm curious what you guys make of that, of this being kind of the number one Jackie Chan Hong Kong produced movie. I mean, it created a franchise of movies. There's, I don't know, like 6 or 7, something like that, Police Story movies after this. So it kind of created a line for him. I mean, do you feel like just the kind of basic structure of 80s cop movies kind of helps that, in the vein of something like Die Hard, where it just kind of has this basic structure that you could work to copy over and over again? Or is there something about this kind of performance in this character that seems to work better than some of the other Jackie characters, especially in Hong Kong? I guess I'm curious, Lydia, because I know you've been watching a lot of his movies recently.
Jackie Chan seems like he plays kind of a lot of cop characters because he plays a policeman. No, he's a Navyman kind of against... Anyway, Project A, like these positions of authority. He's a policeman, and I think Rumble in the Bronx, which is like a Chinese policeman in the Bronx / Vancouver. Sorry, I forgot the question. I just started answering it.
What? So the question was, out of all the Jackie Chan movies you've seen, since you've seen a lot, more than any of us have, I think, does this stand out as like the one to watch? Because it seems like that's the reputation. I'm
going to say no, and I don't know if that's just because, again, I'm not as interested in just the pure stunt work / choreography of what he's doing. I don't necessarily think his character, like, kind of, he plays the well-meaning but a little bit beleaguered policeman in a lot of the works I've seen, and I don't know if this is the like archetypal version of that or the best representation. I liked him a lot better in Project A. It's just like a little bit mischievous, but ultimately very loyal to the force sort of thing. I also don't see how this kicked off a whole 7-film franchise.
Well, it's such a difference from the character he played in Wheels on Meals, where he's just kind of this goofy getting by skateboards around from his food truck character. In this one, even though he's kind of I wouldn't say he's all put together in this. At the same time, he at least has a straight line of a conscience that he's kind of playing, especially in the last act of the movie where he's on the run.
It's kind of like this higher sense of loyalty thing. I don't know, like there's a cop that wants to do the right thing, but maybe the department's kind of corrupt or inefficient. And I'm not sure this is the best plot line to illustrate that character. Especially because he's such a jerk to his girlfriend.
Yeah, he is kind of a selfish asshole in this movie.
I felt so bad for her. Especially because, like, all of that shit, like, he was so kind of douchey to her throughout the movie. And then towards the end, he's like, May, get the briefcase. And I was like, sweet. She's going to get the briefcase and save the day. And it's going to be good. And then she gets kicked down the fucking stairs. Twice. I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
And she just sort of forgives him for his assholishness out of nowhere. Like, we don't see that emotional beat happen for her. It happens between scenes, and all of a sudden she's just doting upon him again. And so it's a weird character dynamic.
I kind of think
to get really invested.
Yeah, I kind of think this is a problem with a lot of the Hong Kong versions I've seen. I mentioned this at the very beginning. I think this is as good a time as any to talk about it. Like, the movies just end. Like, he has a very intense climactic fight scene that is really impressive, and it goes on for a bit. And then when the fight is over, the movie is over. Regardless of if any of these plot lines have actually been resolved. And I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, I guess if you don't care, like if you're there for like, this is a Jackie Chan vehicle, this is a vehicle for doing stunts, for showing off choreography, or like really, it doesn't really matter.
Well, I think the movie assumes that the plot line has already been resolved, and we've forgotten all about the conflict with Maggie Cheung's character. But no, it actually hasn't.
It's like he won the fight, so it's all good.
But that fight scene... Yeah.
Can we talk about just the big set pieces in this movie?
That was kind of impressive.
It's a bit Captain Obvious here. Action movie has great action scenes.
It was awesome.
But this movie has really great big action scenes. Ones in which I'm like actively worried for the health of the actors doing it. Apparently for good reason, since they're going to the hospital between every take. Is this what watching Mission Impossible Fallout is like? This seems like how people described that movie earlier this year.
Yeah.
But like the scene at the beginning with the bus chase, and he's using an umbrella to like latch on to the end of the bus, and he's being dragged. The aerial shot like down at him as he's like trying to keep his feet off of the ground is one thing, but the wider shot when the bus is going around the curve and he's like swinging off of the bus and like dangling in the middle of the air, actually held by nothing but an umbrella hook. That is horrifying and like really thrilling. I don't usually get that like tied up in the safety of characters in action movies, but I really did in this one for some reason.
I wonder if it's because Jackie Chan doesn't come off across like Tom Cruise does, like a little bit egotistical, especially in these early films where it's not like I have to prove myself, I can still do it. It's like, no, I'm just going to do it because I'm going to be the best at this. If that's the difference.
Which I guess is a Buster Keaton thing as well.
Yeah. Zach?
I mean, I guess, isn't that like the mark of a good action movie, that you are just kind of sitting there like, you know, amazed at the... You don't want to be like not amazed at this, you know, because you like watch a Marvel movie and you're just like, bleh. Yeah, but I think that's kind of like some of the sheen from watching, you know, something from Jackie Chan, or even far back with Buster Keaton, or even currently to an extent with Tom Cruise, like just the physicality aspect of adding that to the sequence does it heightens it a little bit, because I mean, like, even though I didn't love Fallout, it's pretty insane to watch the moment when he jumps off that helicopter and you see his ankle actually break. Like, you can see the moment his ankle breaks, because it was reported that he broke his ankle during filming, and like that does add to it. And yeah, I think that Tom Cruise it's a little bit more showy. You know, he's like, here I am going on the helicopter, and then he does it, and people, you know, flip out about it. But I think adding that physicality does it heightens what the sequence that you're watching. It's the same for watching, you know, having that practicality in like Fury Road, like knowing that that's all happening. It seems superficial, but I think it does make that small leap of difference.
I will also say, I think Jackie Chan's editing influences. You're making fun of me, Zach, for watching the video over and over again. And I don't know if we talked about it on mic or off mic. The Tony Zhao video that talks about how Jackie Chan edits his films, especially the ones he's directed, but the ones he's in also, to emphasize what he's doing physically and give you the best shot. When he slides down the pole at the end at the mall, like, you see that 3 times. And I kind of have to assume they only did it once, and those are the 3 shots they got from different camera angles. And they're going to put it all in there because it's impressive.
Yeah.
So,
well, he did... you know, go to the hospital afterwards, so
so you're gonna use that take.
Well, the first time he, like, you know, slid down the thing, I was like, I want to see that again. And then he, like, and then I got to see it 2 more times. I was like, hell yeah.
They knew what you wanted before you could ask for it.
Ash, I'm curious, you mentioned off mic before we started recording that you weren't like super into action movies, but you've really been kind of getting into the genre by watching these Jackie Chan movies. I mean, does kind of that practicality element add to that, or what's been kind of piquing your interest about the action genre at large because of these movies?
Yeah, Nathan Smith and I used to fight about this back in college, because Nathan's a big action movie guy, and I would be like, action movies are stupid, and I hate them. And Nathan would be like, well, you're stupid. But no, so yeah, I've just kind of avoided action movies for, I would say, most of my life. But watching these Jackie Chan movies, I think it is really the practicality of it. Not necessarily that all of it is happening, but I think that's really kind of thrilling for me to watch. I know in Wheels on Meals, I was like, during that big fight scene, just like watching how intense it was reminded me, I remember when I was little, we used to watch The Karate Kid like all the time. And it reminded me of watching The Karate Kid and like how intense those like fight scenes were. And I haven't seen The Karate Kid in like since I was little, so I don't know if it holds up, but but it reminded me of like watching like just a really intense fight scene that like I hadn't seen in forever. And I think the fact that it's real makes a huge difference. And I think the fact that it's like, I was talking to someone, I'm a fiction writer. I was talking to another writer about this, about violence in content that we consume. And I generally don't like to consume a lot of violent content, but I'm usually always okay with a fist fight. And I think part of that, and that might be totally wrong. I might be totally like screwed up that I'm like always okay with a fist fight. But I think part of it is because I think like hand-on-hand combat is really intimate in some sort of way. That like you hit this person with your body and then you have to look them in their eyes afterwards. You know what I mean? When like action movies where you're shooting people and it's like a shoot off, it's like guns and stuff. It's like from yards and yards away, you know, and it's like totally distanced and it doesn't mean anything. And you're just seeing people get, you know, like mowed over and killed by the dozens, you know, and it,
yeah.
How do you feel?
I think this was my main problem with John Wick too.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I mean that was our big conversation about John Wick too. It's about the use of
I haven't
guns
seen
that.
it, so
I'm wondering, Ash, how do you feel about the fact that Jackie Chan in this movie, and it seems like in a lot of his movies, in lieu of fist fights, it's often, you know, fights with things that are not weapons. Like he's fighting people with clothes racks and stuff in the mall. Like, does that have the same intimate quality for you as a fist fight does?
I don't know if it's, I mean, it's certainly not as intimate as like, Andrew, I don't know if you watched Wheels on Meals, but like the big fight in that movie was like, if I'm remembering correctly, it was just fist to fist, like the
bare
whole
knuckle
time, and they were like the opponent's eyes were very distinct to me, and so it's not as intimate as that. But I think with this movie, it was more of kind of a Chaplin Keaton situation to me when he was grabbing the coat racks and like using the props and things like that. And I thought it was really cool and I enjoyed it. Like when he grabbed the clothes racks, I was like, hell yeah, you know, but
this demonstrates a lot of creativity.
Yeah, it is really creative and I really enjoyed it. Just the choreography of it and the innovation, but yeah. I don't know.
Well, that also kind of adds to going back to the point we were making about how actually, you know, doing the stunts heightens the effect of the action, because like him having to use the environment around him and think on his feet and be creative with it, even though it is choreographed, but he makes it look so effortlessly, like he's just coming up with whatever's around him. That I think that creative, watching the character's brain kind of move and look around and work is much more impressive and much more engaging than just pulling out the gun and going boom boom, that's it. Having some sort of shoot off it's very one note, you're firing back and forth, but with this he doesn't have anything else. He's kind of, it's almost like that, like the pin cat in the alleyway, and he's having to fight his way out using whatever elements around him. And I think that adds to it, because you're sitting there, your brain's moving, you're trying to think through what he can use in order to fight his way out, and he's doing the same thing, and that kind of intertwines you with the character and what's happening.
Could we talk about the things that happen between the action scenes? Because the thing that brought this, the movie kind of was elevated for me, not just on the strength of those big set pieces, but also the fact that Jackie Chan is always using stunts in non-action set piece scenes. Like when he stumbles upon the surprise party in his house, and he gets hit with a pie. I think he has to like flip back over the couch and land on the table, and it's like a really impressive physical stunt that looks like it hurts, but we're not in an action scene at all. The scene where he parallel parks the car, like Tokyo drifts into the parallel parking spot, is like an insane bit of action work in a non-action scene. A lot of people on Letterboxd.
It's also really funny.
It's
because
very
the guy's
funny.
he's just like, good parking job.
That was my spot.
Even though you stole my spot.
A bunch of Letterboxd reviews point out that at one point Jackie Chan scrapes poop off of his shoe by doing the moonwalk, which is another bit of just like showing off physicality in a scene that doesn't need to be in the movie, but it serves both those purposes, being very funny and showing off Jackie Chan's physicality. And damn that telephone scene!
I really don't know why he's walking,
scene.
why he's walking by the cows.
He also eats noodles with pencils.
He does.
The telephone sequence is just to kind of play into it, unravels, rather quickly. It's just this like the build, the build by watching any slapstick comedy from literally any era, where this is going. Like it's a classic kind of who's on first type slapstick bit. But yeah, the one, how he's balancing the different phones, the degree of the phone calls from him talking to his girlfriend to I was raped goes, just that varying degree adds to the whole element. And then I think this, throws back that the rotary phone is much more comedic than the cell phone, because just the twirly.
Try this gag.
Yeah, the gag just wouldn't work with a cell phone or anything mobile. So, shout out to the rotary phone.
So I think that, imbuing all of these comedic or just plot-centric scenes with this really impressive and funny physicality, it makes the movie feel like the action never really stops. After the big set pieces are over, the momentum is still going, carrying you over into the next one. And so I thought it was really
Put
exciting.
it on the poster.
Yeah.
That's like the poster quote. The action never stops.
I mean
story.
this literally not in a cliche trying to get on the poster kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're a little too late. It was already announced that it's going to be in the Criterion Collection. So
today, the day that we were recording this, it was announced.
What?
Yeah, man. People who live in Knoxville,
and it's getting a re-release in theaters.
Yeah. Police Story. Are they doing 1 and 2 or just 1?
1 and 2.
Nice.
Any final thoughts on Police Story before we kind of wrap up? This one I really enjoyed. I think I liked it a little more than Wheels on Meals, just because, like you said, the action does never stop. It's either action in the more traditional form, or it's action like you were just describing in the comedic moments where it's still this very physical. It's these very physical sequences, but it's completely to comedic effects. Another just example that I'm thinking off the top of my head is when May, his girlfriend, is leaving and she's on her little moped and he's trying to keep her from running, and he keeps like pulling her off and stopping and starting the moped. And
my God.
Finally, she just like kind of crashes it, which again makes him feel, look like even more of a dick. But that seems to be his kind of mode for this movie. And but it's still very physical, somewhat comedic scene, even though I felt bad for Maggie Cheung. But yeah, strong recommendation on Police Story.
Yeah, I think there's a whole other podcast episode we could have about like the questionable gender politics of this movie, but I'm mostly willing to forgive them because I'm just so entertained by it. My hot take is this is really great.
The action never stops.
So enjoyed watching it.
Andrew Swafford.
The action never stops.
I think it's worth checking out if you're interested in Jackie Chan, both as a performer and as a director, directing himself performing. So that's significant, I think.
That was a very diplomatic answer.
You also see...
You're welcome.
Jackie Chan's ass, briefly.
Oh my God.
So if you're interested in Jackie Chan in that
Ash,
way,
maybe you should watch the 2010 Karate Kid that has Jackie Chan as the Mr.
Oh, I thought you were going to say his ass is in that too. And I was like, whoa.
Oh, is that
His
the
ass
one
is
with
not in it. As far as I know, I mean, maybe it is. It's PG.
Jaden.
Yeah, it's Jaden
The
Smith.
Jaden Smith
Jaden
one.
Smith.
Jackie Chan is the Mr. Miyagi
Yeah.
figure. How the
Guess you
hell
got to
have
report
I not
back
seen
for a
this
part
movie?
one.
I will be watching it.
Melding of worlds.
Guess I'm gonna watch it.
Well, I believe that will wrap up this episode of Cinematary. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/cinematary, on Twitter at handle @cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/cinematary, where we post all of the movies that we talked about in this episode. Next week, we will be continuing this series with 1994's The Legend of Drunken Master. Lydia, you've already watched this one. Any previews on how this one shakes out?
It's actually pretty funny. I liked it. Oh, and it's got some really good shade. No. It's got some really good shade on colonialism and the British Empire. Fuck them.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Fuck them. The fuck out of here.
Let's we'll have this and Zama as a double feature. So we'll dig into that. All right. Well, thank you guys. Check out real quick a little plug on the site. We got some good stuff. We're still working through the best of 2018 because I guess that year's never gonna die in our eyes. We had our best blockbusters list this past week. If you're checking back on Monday, if you listen to this episode a little bit later, we have our best foreign films list, and we also have we're gonna have some reviews of If Beale Street Could Talk from Rowan Balogan, as well as Courtney Anderson, and as we mentioned before, we'll have a review of They from Ash Baker. So lots of good stuff, good hot piping content on the Cinematary website. Check it out. If you haven't checked out our best writing list of the year, or some of the top 10 films, if you're still like, what's the best movie from 2018, we got you covered, and we completely ignored Bohemian Rhapsody, so we're already better than the Golden Globes. Shout out to us. Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next week.